Hello and welcome back to the JW Thoughts channel. My name is Wally, and today we are looking at the October JW broadcasting episode. We are going to look at a fascinating window into the minds of the upper echelon of Watchtower leadership and how they really think so highly of themselves. We'll see a little bit about shunning and their goofy policies and how it's led some people to get upset, but they're telling them not to. And of course, we'll look at some personal stories of people who have lived their entire lives as Jehovah's Witnesses. All that and more in this episode of JW Broadcasting. Run the intro.
What do you think? Is it possible for an imperfect human to elevate his or her thinking to agree with God's thinking? And if so, how can we do this? Typical is the experience of one young person who wrote, "I lived a life of immorality and drunkenness. I had sexual diseases. I also sold drugs and just didn't care about anything." As this young person studied the Bible, climbed the mountain, she made changes in order to conform to God's standards. As a result, she was elevated by pure worship. Now she says, "I enjoy peace of mind, self-respect, a hope for the future, a real family, and best of all, a relationship with our Father, Jehovah." Yes, by climbing the mountain of pure worship, she elevated her thinking to agree with God's thinking. And in the process, she has been elevated by pure worship. What have we learned so far? That it is possible to elevate our thinking to agree with God's thinking. We do that by climbing the mountain of pure worship. Of course, the mountain of pure worship is what elevates us. We're not elevated on our own merit. Jehovah blesses our effort to make the climb. Remembering that helps us to be humble as we lovingly assist others who are also climbing the mountain.
So the first 8 minutes or so of this talk is basically him talking about how wonderful and grand it is that Jehovah allows us to climb a mountain so we can be on his level. You can start from the bottom and you can move your way all the way to the top, and you can basically see from the mind of God, which is exactly what the problem was in the Bible when Adam and Eve wanted to be like God and know right and wrong, and so they ate of the fruit. And then he killed them for it. So it's kind of a strange thing. But that point to one side, they really put like the juxtaposition here of, well, what's going to happen to humans on their own? Well, just like this lady. What's down in there, the gutter, and the old plebeian thinking of humans? You got STDs, you got liver disease, you got Furbies. I couldn't think of anything on the fly that had an E's at the end of it. But basically, this is just the worst thing. All manner of depravity is going to happen if you're just left on your own. But you can elevate your thinking. I can't stand the way this guy talks. And then you can see in the mind of God. Now here's the problem with all of this, is that everything that he's talking about is how to be a better Jehovah's Witness. This has zero, bupkis nothing, the sum total of my butthole to do with actual spirituality, being a good person, doing the right thing, objective morality. None of that actually matters. In this world, the only thing that matters is how closely you can follow what the very tippity top of men that run the organization say. That's what he's saying. So as you climb up this mountain and get Jehovah's thinking, the question has to be asked, well, how do I know what God's thinking is? And this guy's answer is, well, me and my friends will tell you. Well, can I come up with it on my own? Nope. Can I just read the Bible and figure it out? Well, I mean, you maybe kind of sort of can, but make sure you're reading our version of the Bible. It's if you just take one step backwards and look at the whole totality of the picture, what they're saying is that unless you follow us in climbing the mountain of our thinking and how we interpret spirituality, God, the Bible, everything, you are going to be down there with the vomit eating scum with the rest of the world. And this is something that they talked about. Was it at the most recent convention where they actually said that the people that aren't on top of the mountain of Jehovah eating the beautiful fruit and whatever, all that wonderful spiritual food that comes from the governing body, if you're not eating from there, well, you're down in the toilet eating poop like an animal, like a rat. And they literally just came out and said that. So this is just a fascinating insight into how these people think. They think that they are literally, quite literally, God's personal gift to mankind, and that the only way to avoid a life of depravity is listening to them. Now, obviously, they're imperfect men, blah, blah, blah. They try and claim that they, we're just humble followers of God. We're all brethren and everything. But listen to this next section, and I'd like to just bring some awareness to the reality of the situation.
One more reminder. If we abandon Jehovah's standards, we quickly lose our elevated standing and perspective. So it's important to hold tightly to Jehovah's elevated way of doing things, even when it's not easy to do so. But what if we do make a serious mistake or become involved in serious wrongdoing? We lose altitude. It's like a free fall at the time. He forgives repentant wrongdoers in a large way. Truly, Jehovah's mercy is on a level that's challenging for us to comprehend. After all, when we forgive a fellow human, it's a case of one sinner forgiving another. All of us realize that sooner or later, we will need to have a fellow human forgive us. But Jehovah, even though he never needs to be forgiven, forgives in a large way. And in his mercy, Jehovah opens the floodgates of the heavens, showering down blessings on those who return to him with all their heart.
So Jehovah, he is the only one that never needs forgiveness. We regular normies out here, of course, you extend forgiveness because at some point in time, it's true, you will need forgiveness from someone else. But what often goes hand in hand with seeking forgiveness? That would be an apology. And what has the governing body very publicly come out and said?
Nor is an apology needed for not getting it exactly right previously. We understand this is how Jehovah operates. He reveals matters gradually when it is needed. And also, the governing body is neither inspired nor infallible.
So God, he never needs to seek forgiveness. He never needs to apologize for any of his actions. Doesn't that sound really familiar with how the governing body, or by extension, all of the upper echelon people, the decision makers within the Watchtower organization, how they see themselves? They don't need to ask for forgiveness. They don't need to apologize. But hey, if you break any of their rules, what is it the equivalent to? You're entering a free fall. He says it right there. Yeah, you're on top of a mountain and you are in free fall if you break any of our rules. The arrogance with how they talk and how they think, because they don't come out and say it overtly, but all of the clues and hints are right there. It's just seething out of his skin that it's just like, I am the most important person on the entire planet and no one is better than me. And if you don't listen to me, you're basically going to end up in a free fall and end up, in a trash heap. Now, speaking of forgiveness, there is an interesting little cross-section here of Watchtower policy and how normal Jehovah's Witnesses have practiced their religion for a long time. So last year, after they were getting more and more pressure about their shunning policies, especially in Norway, they made a few little adjustments to, they had a bit of a wedgie in Norway, so they had to reach in there and get that figured out. And in relieving themselves of this shunning, or trying to relieve themselves of this shunning wedgie, I think they actually made a lot of people upset, because they were very familiar with the idea that forgiveness equals being shunned, getting kicked out for an extended period of time. And one of the changes that they made was saying that, well, if you get disfellowshipped, if you get removed from the congregation, you can come back within a couple of months. And I think it's actually starting to annoy people, because there are a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses that experienced getting kicked out of their family, of their social group, of their religion, spiritual church, everything, and not being able to get that back for years. And so for years, they suffered in isolation and embarrassment and feeling lost and alone in this already difficult life to live. And now they're seeing people get kicked out for 90 days, and I think it's pissing them off. So he's going to try and address that right now.
The August 2024 study edition of the Watchtower helped us to better appreciate Jehovah's elevated thinking as reflected in his mercy and his willingness to forgive repentant wrongdoers, even those who have committed serious sins. For example, we discussed the case of the unrepentant wrongdoer in the congregation in Corinth. His sinful course was so shocking that Paul said it was not even found among the nations. Truly, this Christian man had abandoned Jehovah's elevated standards. Because he was unrepentant, Paul instructed the elders to remove the man from the congregation. And yet, perhaps only months later, Paul instructed the elders to kindly forgive and comfort the man, to confirm their love for him. Why? The discipline had yielded positive results. The man repented and was welcomed back into the congregation as a brother. What good news! What a beautiful example of Jehovah's elevated thinking. And it serves to assure any Christian who's fallen into serious wrongdoing that it is possible, with Jehovah's help, to get up, dust yourself off, and continue climbing the mountain of pure worship.
So in opening up this conversation about, forgiveness, and this is what Jehovah's elevated thinking is, he's forgetting a very key word in his sentence structure, and that is now. He should be saying that is what Jehovah's elevated thinking is now. Because if you go back 3 years, 30 years, 100 years, well, not quite 100 years because it really didn't start in the 50s, but 70 years, right? Jehovah's elevated thinking back then was that someone was going to have to really go through it and prove that they were truly repentant. They would kick you out and disfellowship you. If you sneezed while you were holding the microphone and while your head went down, you looked down and boom, man, I looked at her boobies. Ah, crap. Now I'm getting disfellowship for holding the microphone and having bad allergies. And then they kick you out and then you can't come back for 3 years. That's a fictitious example, by the way. But you get what I'm saying. They would kick you out for literally any reason. Because they were very stringent rule followers, okay? And they wouldn't let you back in. They wouldn't allow you to have access to your friends and family for a minimum of a year. But more often than not, it was longer than that. And during the course of that, you would have to be at every single meeting. You'd have to just make sure that you were still living your life and trying to prove yourself that you were a good Jehovah's Witness. That is the historic precedent of this situation. And so when he's saying, and he slips that little word in there, well, this guy that was doing things worse than all the nations, he was allowed to be, let back into the congregation by Paul, perhaps after only a few months. And it's like you almost feel like he should be looking around, asking himself, did anyone notice that? I don't know, but I don't know, Stephen. Maybe they won't even see it. So it's fascinating that he's just leaving out an entire decades-long history of how Watchtower handles things. And back then, that was Jehovah's elevated thinking. So when he's saying this, he's leaving out that very important word. This is Jehovah's elevated thinking now. It didn't used to be, but that's what it is now. God doesn't change his mind, but, let's not get bogged down with our complex theology. Now that that is all set in place, listen how he tries to put the onus on other people, the believing Jehovah's Witnesses, that they need to change their mind without ever actually coming out and acknowledging that Watchtower is the one that changed the policy, and that's why they're having this frustration in the first place.
And yet, the Watchtower frankly acknowledged that some in the congregation may have been reluctant to display a welcoming spirit. Why? Just like the older brother in Jesus' illustration of the lost son at Luke chapter 15, verses 28 through 30, some faithful ones in the congregation may have felt resentment toward the wrongdoer. It's no different today. When the elders determine that a repentant wrongdoer is allowed to remain in the congregation, or one is reinstated back into the congregation, we might find it challenging to display a welcoming spirit, especially if we were personally affected in some way by the wrongdoing. In such a case, we could feel that we've been forgotten, that our personal feelings are being ignored, or that Jehovah doesn't care about the damage inflicted by the repentant wrongdoer. We could even feel that Jehovah has failed us. What can help us to have Jehovah's elevated view?
So this governing body lickspittle here is trying to basically confuse people, gaslight them to a certain extent, try and make them think like this has always been the practice and it's just you that's feeling upset by it, when in reality, like I've already talked about it before, so I won't just keep saying the same thing over and over again, but there is a pattern and a history that Jehovah's Witnesses have operated with, and that is very familiar. And Watchtower, under pressure and not wanting to wreck their international reputation, decided that they were going to adjust their shunning and the procedures and everything with respect to that. And now Jehovah's Witnesses are no doubt going to be upset. I would be crossing my arms if I had to work my butt off for 2 years just to get back into the congregation. And everyone was like, oh, okay, well, you really earned your way back. Now people aren't even getting disfellowshipped, and if they do, it's only like a little quick 90-day probation period. Of course, that is going to upset people. Of course. So the problem all along, by saying the old way was biblical and the new way is biblical, the problem is the person saying that both of them were biblical. Because it's all, like I said in the beginning, it's all about their interpretation of it. It has nothing to do with what's in the Bible. It's just their interpretation. Even if there was this example of Jesus giving, this little parable or whatever about the two sons, and why are you forgiving him? Yeah, that piece of crap. He went and spoiled all of his inheritance, blah, 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 and he was mad. And in Jesus' illustration, it's like, no, he's not doing the right thing because my message is all about love and forgiveness. Watchtower ignored that for decades and called that God's elevated thinking. And now they're using it because of, social pressure to say, oh, well, no, this is the new way of doing things. So the entire problem with it is with Watchtower. And yet they try and tell people that the problem isn't with them. And now to bring it all home, this goober, oh my God, where did this bug come from all of a sudden? Holy crap. Hold up. Got it. No need to be alarmed. One stink bug has been dealt with. Okay, what was I saying? Oh yeah, to finish this whole thing off, this guy is going to give probably the worst example that I can think of from the Bible of God's elevated thinking and how he executes perfect justice. And the conclusion he comes to is absolutely hilarious. So buckle up for this one.
Consider a Bible example. King David committed a serious sin when he took Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah. Not only did he commit adultery, stealing the wife of another man, but he compounded his sin by arranging for the death of Uriah, adultery, and murder. Of course, Jehovah saw the whole ugly scene unfold. How would he deal with David? He arranged for Nathan to confront David. Nathan used a powerful illustration that touched David's heart. As a result, David repented. How did Jehovah respond? Rather than imposing the death penalty called for by the Mosaic law, notice what's said at 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 13. Jehovah mercifully allowed David to live. David continued to rule as king. But what about the victim? What about Uriah? Did Jehovah forgive David? Yes. But Jehovah has never forgotten Uriah. In the new world, Jehovah will execute perfect justice when he resurrects Uriah, and how we all look forward to being there to welcome him. What do we learn from this example?
Nothing, absolutely nothing.
We need to elevate our thinking to agree with God's. Like Jehovah, we can experience the joy of giving by forgiving. It's one of the most beautiful forms of giving there is.
All right, we are wrist deep inside the colon of Watchtower idiosyncratic behavior here. I don't understand how this guy doesn't hear himself. So David is a guy that is a voyeur, a little peeping Tom, and he's sitting there looking at a woman bathing and is thinking, god damn. He calls a servant over and says, hey, bring her to my chambers. We need to talk about, gold futures or something. So he brings her over, has potentially, probably not, intercourse with her, finds out she's married, and his, big brain of being God's chosen one here is to say, married, yeah, send a letter out and put him on the front lines. Just absolutely guarantee that he dies. Put him on the front lines and then everyone back up behind him, and he's just standing there as a wave of arrows gets him. And so his efforts of protecting the kingdom, of protecting the Holy Land, is the king is banging his wife and going to kill him. So God is sitting there from his little throne in heaven and looking at all of this and says, God broke multiple laws here, adultery, murder. I'm just not going to punish him. He seems pretty sorry. Yeah, we won't punish him. But, in order to make sure everything's all good, let's kill the baby that they had together. Because that seems logical. So we'll kill the baby. David will be fine. Everything's all good. And this goofball looks at that story, and his conclusion is, I am going to go on give a public talk for all Jehovah's Witnesses to see. And I'm going to use this as an example of God's beautiful mercy. And if anyone is sitting there scratching their nuts asking the obvious question, wait, I thought we were talking about God's perfect mercy. What about the guy that got freaking blasted and his wife was getting her back blown out by the king? What about him? The paradise? That's so cool that this goofball is so stupid that is what he thought was a good idea. So anyone out there, if you have a complaint, if you have some sort if you're seeking justice, some sort of recourse for anything bad that happened to you, just know that the Watchtower leadership doesn't give two rips about it. They will think about you like they think about a fart. It's stinky for a bit, but 10 minutes later, you forgot it ever happened. That is what they will think of your complaints. They simply don't care. And if you want to raise a ruckus about it, guess what? You can just wait till paradise. That's God's perfect justice, baby. Anyway, this talk was really funny and interesting and a really good insight into how the governing body leadership thinks. Let's continue with the rest of the broadcast.
Well, I grew up in a big family of 8 children. My parents really valued education, so I moved to San Diego and started attending law school. That's the year that I met Melinda and we started dating.
By that time, we weren't really practicing Catholics.
We hadn't been given any reason to have faith. So that was one thing that really attracted us about the truth, is we could see reasons and see facts and evidence that built up a faith. Jesus said, if you put the kingdom interest first, everything else will be taken care of. Jehovah will take care of what you need. I basically became a part-time lawyer and a full-time preacher.
We believed the promise, and our lives became very much happier as a result.
We'd go out to ministry first and do other things later. And even as our family grew, that was kind of the way we raised them. We worked with people who were fun people, who really took an interest in our children. We feel like we had several pioneer couple friends who helped raise our children. So our friends became their friends. During 1984-85, a letter went out to all congregations in the United States asking if you could come to Bethel.
So we were so happy Jim got accepted to do construction.
Given a call from the brother who was the overseer for construction, Gil Nazaroff, and he said, you've been reassigned to the legal department.
After Jim had done a number of temporary stints at Bethel, we were invited to go for 2 weeks. So we went with the boys. We had such a good time.
After that, they started talking to me seriously. Do you think you and your family could move to New York to live at Bethel and to work full-time for us? Shortly after arriving at Bethel, I was assigned to do some work overseas, and Melinda was home with 3 boys.
It was something that was very difficult for me.
It was a challenge because in those days, Brooklyn was really a third world country to us Southern California residents.
But the blessings that have come as a result far outweigh any of the sacrifice.
It's not too often watching a JW broadcast that I start catching flies. My mouth drops to the floor and I look like a real bozo. But this did that to me. I couldn't believe what my earballs were hearing. For any of you that might not be hearing the same thing I am, let's just do a little comparison here, compare notes. I'll just give one example. It won't take me long to find. I'm very confident there's probably at least 50 videos on jw.org saying the exact same thing, but Editing Wally will put that in now.
The biggest challenge for me and my family has been illness. Not having enough money to pay for the treatment we need. Each week, I have to save up enough money just to feed my family.
We were deeply saddened by our situation. First, it was a challenge for us to make ends meet because I didn't have a regular job. I also worried about how my children would suffer if we did not have sufficient food and other material needs.
I began to think that moving to another country was the only way to provide for my family. As 1 Timothy 5:8 says, it is my responsibility to support them. What kept me from moving to another country is my love for Jehovah and for my family. As Philippians 1:10 says, we should make sure of the more important things. And for my family, our spirituality is very important.
Isa pa po, nakapagpatibay din sa amin yung...
The fine advice of an elder strengthened me. He asked, does Jehovah only shower blessings abroad?
Sa ibang bansa lang ba nagbibigay ng pagpapala si Jehovah? Tinandaan ko po yun. Kaya...
I remember what he said. From then on, I realized that the most important thing in life is our spirituality. Not the material things that we can get from this world, for it will also vanish.
After that, they started talking to me seriously. Do you think you and your family could move to New York to live at Bethel and to work full-time for us? Shortly after arriving at Bethel, I was assigned to do some work overseas, and Melinda was home with 3 boys.
It was something that was very difficult for me.
A consistent theme among JW Broadcasting episodes is showing families in very difficult financial circumstances in poor countries that are barely able to feed their families. And Watchtower's position historically has been to not leave your family behind, go to a different country to pursue work that might be able to provide a better life for your family, right? Because, yes, the Bible says to provide for your family, but more importantly is their spirituality. That has been Watchtower's position whenever this comes up. Forever, right? Don't leave your family behind. Your family and their spirituality is more important. So why, on God's green nutsack, are they having a family move first from California to Brooklyn, New York, and then immediately telling the husband that he needs to go and work for Watchtower in a different country, leaving behind his family? Oh, because Watchtower stands to gain from it. That's crazy. Like, Watchtower has some very wild double standards and double speak. They'll say all manner of insane things, and, you know, I get kind of like hardened to it at this point. But holy crap. Well, that is so evil. To look at this example of an educated person. They were educated because they weren't a Jehovah's Witness. You find that they have talent. You bring them to Watchtower, and then you send that talent elsewhere because it helps your organization. And when someone else wants to help their family, their children, eat food, you tell them it's more important to stay with them. That absolutely blows my mind.
There was something that was said that really did stick with me, that no matter where I am from, I can be your family. We are a worldwide household under the law of love, in the comfort of the caring arms of Jehovah God above. No sweeter place could I ever find myself in than here with you all now. Oh, I'm singing, you are my sister, you are my brother, you are my father, you are my mother. And it is not by blood, it's a higher kind of love. You are my sister, you are my brother, you are my family like no other. And it is not by blood, no, it's a higher kind of love. A higher kind of love.
Ah, I gotcha. You weren't ready for the old jump scare there, were you, pal? Yeah, this music video, gonna be completely honest with you, it's pretty boring. It's just irritating at this point, hearing them talk about, oh, we're just such a wonderful family. You're my brother, you're my sister, you're my stepmom, you're my stepbro. Like, it's just annoying to hear. We know that this organization rips families to shreds, and they do it all under the guise of spirituality. This is what God wants you to do. Even though that in their own broadcast here, they don't acknowledge it, but they demonstrate how their policies have absolutely bupkis to do with what's in the Bible or what God's thinking is. It's just what they come up with at any given time. And sometimes the things that they come up with ruin families. And yet they want to sing happy clappy little songs, hitting some spoons on their knees about how everyone's their family and their brother and sister. So whoop-dee freaking da for them. There was one other section about what was going on, or some of the stuff that was happening in China. I might make a separate video on this independently, because there is a bit more of an interesting story about the witnessing work in China specifically. So I'll save that for sometime in the future and use it as a reference point for sure. But yeah, that's about all I wanted to talk about in this month's broadcasting. Hope you enjoyed it. With all of that being said, stay safe, be kind, And don't forget to spend more time loving the things you love than hating the things you hate. Now go out there and have a good-ass day.